Hello. Welcome to our Wednesday Devotional Thoughts. You know, sometimes the story after the big story is a better story than the first story. At least it was so in the ministry of Jesus Christ. You remember a time when thousands of people were without food and they were hungry, and Jesus' disciples said after he'd ministered to them, "Send them home. We don't have anything to eat, don't have anything to feed them with." And Jesus said, "What do you have?" And they found a lad with a small amount of food, and Jesus took that, multiplied it, and fed 5,000 men and their families. But there's a story that follows that up. After they went home, Jesus sent his apostles out to go ahead of him, and he stayed back to pray. Then, after his time of prayer, he started walking on the water toward the disciples. A great storm came up on the sea where they were sailing. And in the book of Mark, chapter 6, verse 48, we hear these words, "And he saw them toiling in rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them." I think there's much to learn from that story, but I want to take just the words, "the wind was contrary unto them." And I'm going to talk to you for just a moment or two or three about contrary winds. First of all, when contrary winds come into our lives, that is, storms into our lives, that is, things that seem to be pushing us the wrong direction, contrary winds, it may be because we're going the wrong direction. This ever happened to you? You had things go on and you pushed back and you discovered you were going the wrong direction. We have illustrations of that, of course, in the Bible. Do you remember Balaam the prophet, King Balak was the one he dealt with. Balaam the prophet had some problems, and he was going to go with King Balak and curse the Israelites. And God said, "No, don't go." He got on his donkey and started to go, and the donkey ran him up against the wall because the donkey had seen some problems. The problem was Balaam was going the wrong direction. He thought he was facing contrary winds, but he was going the wrong direction. I think of Jonah. He had contrary winds. He did not want to go to the place that God told him to go, so he hopped on a boat and went a different direction. And there was a great storm. He faced contrary winds, and the reason was because he was going the wrong direction. I would encourage you, when you face contrary winds in your life, to look into your life and be sure you're going the right direction. Be sure you're not having to face bad winds and bad problems because you're going the wrong direction. There's a second thought that came to my mind. Sometimes the winds that are contrary to us are a blessing to others. Contrary winds would involve these ships, and that's what the story was about. But ships go all kinds of directions. The wind that is helping one might be hindering another. I was speaking about the contrary winds. Sorry for that interruption. The contrary winds sometimes are helping others, and they may seem to hurt us. I'm thinking right now of all this, the restrictions from the COVID situation, and how it's restricted our church, and how that we have been hindered in our ministries, and we've had to cut back some of our ministries, and it's very, very frustrating. But it forced us to move to this process of recording our services, streaming them online, and even forced me into making these devotionals. And I'm not sure how many people are listening, but I get feedback almost every week that people are listening both to the services and to this devotional time and being blessed by that. So what seemed to be contrary winds really could turn out to be that which was helping other people. So when you face contrary winds, try to look at it from another angle and see if really somebody else is being blessed. Then the third thought is this. Contrary winds often strengthen us. Most of us understand in physical training, we use extra weights on our ankles, or we do more push-ups than we think we're able to, or we lift more weight. We try to go as hard as we can, And sometimes it's that resistance that causes us to build strength. I believe that God allows that to happen also in our lives. Sometimes He'll let things come into our lives to enable us to see how much faith we have, to enable our faith to grow. The Bible says, remember in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. So when contrary winds come into our lives, we need to evaluate them, and perhaps God is trying to strengthen us. So my thought for today is very simple. When we face contrary winds, and we will, let's thank God for them. Because if we're serving Him and we're in His will, something good will happen even from the contrary winds. May you have a wonderful, wonderful day.